It's Tim and Bob. Everyone recognize Bob? How do we know you again?
Let me see. Did you used to work at Stop and Shop?
I was the lettuce guy at Stop and Shop in Dennisport. Did you ever
Yeah?
cut through Dennisport?
No. Yeah. Yes, I did. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Bob Copeland, our childhood meteorologist, and then some. Still going strong.
Medium strong.
Where do you live? What do you do?
Littleton, New Hampshire. I still do. I mean, whenever there's a storm around, I got my 20 or so URLs on the computer that I have to check, and but I do a little consulting, some legal work mostly, forensics, and I do some painting. And,
BobCopelandArt.com.
that's right. Yeah.
We can actually see your art and a webcam that points right at at Cannon Mountain.
Cannon and Lafayette. Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I have so many questions. Now, you say you have 20 URLs open during a storm. I would say that we each qualify as weather geeks.
Yeah. We used to say weather nuts, but I think it's basically the same.
Weather nuts.
Yeah.
When did you discover you were a weather nut? And what caused it?
Oh man. I lived in Taunton, Massachusetts in those days when I was a kid. And I used to keep records of the weather. I had a little pad of the sticky on one side, and not the postums, but I mean with the glue on the back of and so you peel off and I'd date it and take the temps.
So you had a weather journal when you were a young man?
Journal, but it wasn't in book form. It was in loose pieces of paper that accumulated in a box on the floor.
At what age did you start?
Oh gosh, during grammar school, I'm sure. So probably by 5th or 6th grade.
Were there weathermen on TV? Who was the first?
There was no TV.
There was no TV.
When Don Kent was in those days was Weatherby, the BZ weatherman, and so Don, I was very fond of Don. I wouldn't miss a program of his, but I mean he didn't start on TV until 1955. So the earliest weatherman, in my recollection, other than E.B. Rideout on radio, but the first TV weatherman in Boston was actually an MIT professor by the name of Jim Austin, who many years later I would be interviewed by in order to get into MIT. But in those days, Jim Austin, this would have been 1948, a little before you were born.
A little, just a couple years.
Yeah. And the lady across the street from where I lived had the first TV on the street. It was one of those big boxes with a little round black and white screen in the middle. But that was great because she knew I was interested in the weather, so she said, anytime you want to watch Dr. Austin, just come on over, So I'd be over there every night at 7 o'clock. Jim Austin had a 15-minute weather broadcast. And he used to smoke his pipe, and he was Australian,
Oh, no.
He'd puff on his pipe, and then he'd put a few, he'd put a front on the map and draw a few isobars and take another puff on the pipe. I mean, to fill, can you imagine filling 15 minutes?
Actually, I can.
I know you could, yeah. Yes. But, so that's how it all started. I used to get maps from the government printing office, blank U.S. maps, and I'd cart them over to Mrs. Morrow's, and I'd draw the map, whatever Jim drew, I'd draw it up.
So you taught yourself weather by watching Jim Austin on television?
Yeah, basically.
How did you get to be on television?
Oh boy.
Short version.
Short version. All right, I was in MIT at the time. I had met Don a few times by that time, mostly at his home in Weymouth, North Weymouth, and he had this great thing. He had a little office in the back of his garage with a big picture window looking out over Hingham Bay, and he had a teletype there, which he got his weather data on, and he had a mic there with a direct line to BZ. I thought this was the coolest thing in the world, you know. I said, I want to do this someday. He said, no, you don't. Stick with engineering. I'd get my BS in EE, electrical, at Northeastern. He said, stick with engineering. That's where the money is, you know. So you don't want to get into this business. But a couple of years later, I get a call one day when I just about finished at MIT in 57, I think it was. Yeah. And Don says, look, my wife is threatening to divorce me.
Don Kent.
Yeah. And he says, I got to take a vacation. Can you fill in for me? So that's how my weather career started.
Did you have a lot of training to go on TV?
No, none.
Don Kent just needed a break because his wife wanted him to take a week off.
Right.
And you filled in for Don Kent.
I filled in for Don Kent.
How did he know to call you?
Well, because he knew I was going to MIT, and I said, Don, I don't have any broadcast experience. He says, you love to talk about the weather. He said, that's all you. He said, we've talked many times. That's all you have to do. You just get on there for 5 minutes and talk about the weather.
That's what we still do today.
Yeah.
Well, you are a mentor of mine, and I think
thank you very much.
I grew up right here over Fallon's Pond, and we could see the thunderstorms actually coming in from the south and west, and so they would come right over the house. And actually, I was scared to death of them. I was petrified of thunderstorms, and the full moon would also come up over here.
Sure.
And I was just fascinated, and I loved that school would be closed due to snow. So I would stare at you and Don Kent and Bruce Schwegler, and I learned that we needed low pressure east of Nantucket to make it snow.
There you go.
Just as
sure.
Benjamin Franklin learned that there was counterclockwise circulation around low pressure.
Yeah.
And so I actually learned similar to you. I
Yeah.
watched TV and I wrote it down when I was a kid. And now they pay me. Us.
That's right.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it was a fun career. When you can have fun doing what you love to do and earn a little money at it, how can it be any better than that, right?
It's an honor to have you here. Growing up here since 1963, I do not recall any devastating hurricanes. Bob was pretty bad, but I was in Rhode Island.
Yep.
So when was the last devastating hurricane for southern New England, do you think?
Well, the mid-50s, Carol and Edna in the same year, but Carol was I have vague recollections of the 38 hurricane. I even go back that far. But in fact, my mom, after the 54 hurricane Carol, no, even before that, no, 44 hurricane, 1944. So by that time I'd have been 12 years old. And Mom, when she saw how interested I was in the hurricane, and I was cutting all the newspaper clippings out and everything, she said, I got some stuff from the 38 hurricane. She went rummaging through an old dresser drawer and pulled out a stack of newspapers from the 38 hurricane. So I made up a big scrapbook about that. And but 54 Hurricane Carol was the first one that because by that time I was going to college, and it was I had the audacity to think that I could actually forecast the hurricane. This was slightly before MIT days, but again, Don Kent, who I watched daily, was very concerned about Hurricane Carol when it was coming up the coast, and drawing some parallels between that and the 38 hurricane. And there were no hurricane warnings issued, but he told all his followers
on Twitter.
Yeah, on Twitter. Yeah, on the radio.
Radio.
That he was doubling up his moorings, or pulling his. This time he pulled the boat out of the water, and he advised all his, boatsmen friends to do likewise, because he thought it was going to be a very serious storm in southeastern New England. And of course it wound up being probably a Category 3 hurricane.
And I don't think we've had one since. Although I did hear Donna in 1960 might have been.
Donna was interesting, but not devastating. I remember driving around Hingham and parts of the South Shore during Donna with some big branches falling and that
So
sort of thing.
54 then. So it's been 60 some years.
Since a really big one?
Just about 60 years. Were there any signs during spring or anything that maybe we're setting up for a hurricane? Like this spring, I'm concerned. I see records being broken in the country for cold and snow back in April and May that were breaking records from 54 and 44. And now we have all these tropical downpours coming across New England in June. And we've already had Tropical Storm Andrea. Is there any way to get a feel for what's going to happen in the next few months?
You know, my feel. I know there's been a lot of scientific investigation, and there are many theories out there. Regarding El Nino and other ocean circulations and the effect on the tropical systems. I always felt that. Like produce, in the supermarket, the best days are, the first couple of days, and after that it starts getting kind of smelly,
With a weather forecast.
Same as produce, yeah.
So weather forecast, although we've gotten a lot better at a 5 to 10 day,
Absolutely.
It's still nearly impossible.
Yeah, and so I admire, Professor Gray and his followers and the people that, try to determine in advance how many storms they're going to get and how many are going to be severe hurricanes, etc. But
well, 54 wasn't even a big number year, at least by the way we used to number them when we could only number them when we could see them without using satellites.
Yeah.
Was it? Do you remember a very wet spring or June in 54? Can you remember it all?
I have no recollection of that, but
what happened? Do you remember the day the Hurricane Carol struck? What was it like?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I went to the Taunton Gazette. I typed up a story, on a real typewriter.
Oh.
I typed up a story a day in advance of Hurricane Carol coming, and mainly because of the input I got from Don Kent. And I forecast that, the hurricane was going to be a severe storm. There's going to be all kinds of damage and all the usual stuff. And I got it down to the Gazette office, and the editor looked at it and he said, "Well, this is fine, but," he said, "we don't want to scare anybody." And he said, "I'll tell you what, if we get the storm, then I'll publish it the day after the storm."
Oh, thank you very little.
Yeah. I said, "Yeah, that's really great." But I mean, he didn't know me from except as a prior paper route delivery.
Oh, so you didn't have any history there.
No, I had no history.
You just wanted to alert people of the potential storm.
Yeah.
Did people know from Don Kent that it was going to be a bad storm?
Yes, people who watched him, and yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he certainly had a better handle on it than any of the official forecasts.
We've done a lot of building by the seashore since 1954.
Oh, absolutely.
What's going to happen if we get a storm like that again?
The slosh models and everything now, they show, if we had a Category 3 storm coming up, say, around the canal or a little west of Cape Cod Canal, and if the tide is right and all, we could have 17-foot tides up in Wellfleet Harbor and other places, Eastham on the bay side where I used to hang out a lot in recent years. That could be devastating. I mean, the house I was living in Eastham is only 11 feet above sea level.
Right, and that whole area from Fairhaven through Woods Hole and even here in Dennisport. I mean, Dennisport essentially is almost at sea level, so we could literally have water coming right up to Route 28.
Yeah.
And right up
28.
And right here in Bass River. Imagine if we got a 15-foot surge right up in here.
Yeah.
And all these trees that have grown around Cape Cod. My dad tells of stories when there were not very many trees back then. Mm-hmm. Is that because of the hurricanes of 38 and 44?
Sure. And of course, one of the primary trees around here is the locust, which is very shallow rooted. And I mean, even after Hurricane Bob, I was, in '91, right?
Right.
I was down and I was on the air at the time, but I came down the Cape as soon as I could afterwards because I wanted to see what damage it was. I could, we couldn't get down Bridge Street in Eastham, Bridge Road, because there were, every 10 feet there was another locust tree across the road. So there was a tremendous amount of tree damage, and the same thing would happen again.
Right. Yeah, we could lose so many trees, and people would believe it's unprecedented. And there's a slight chance that climate alarmists could blame CO2 emissions.
Oh, yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
You really want to...
I really want
to. You really want to open up a can of worms here?
I just believe that the climates always have been extreme.
Absolutely, and we also know that CO2 levels, historically, geological history, were higher by far than they are today before there was any man-made contribution. And people like Joe DeLeo, who have done a lot more research into this than I have, point out that there's only very limited amount of additional warming that could even occur due to additional CO2 in the atmosphere. So, it's just, as far as I'm concerned,
anthropogenic global warming.
Thank you. AGW is easier.
AGW
is a non-issue as far as I'm concerned, but
yeah, I think that there's way too much attention paid on it. What was your most memorable TV time? Do you have any most memorable TV experiences?
Oh, wow. Well, Blizzard of '78 is right up there. I mean, I was one of 2 people that made it to the studio the morning the blizzard was in full force.
That would be Monday, February 6th?
That would be Tuesday the 7th.
Oh, Tuesday the 7th.
Yeah. I was in Monday, and of course we were, not trying to blow my own horn, but, I think we had a pretty good forecast out. Mark Rosenthal had been on Sunday doing the radio stations. We had a group of radio stations that we did, and Mark called me at home. He did the weekend coverage, and he called me at home and he said, "Cope, I'm going for 1 to 2 feet of snow." I said, "No, you're not, Mark. Nobody goes for 1 to 2 feet of snow." And he said, "No, Cope, we knew there was going to be a big storm, as early as Friday, Thursday, before the weekend. But, when he's talking 1 to 2 feet of snow, those were the days when, the Weather Service would point out that, we might have a 1-foot snowstorm once every 3 years. Or so. I figured that was exactly what the stats were, but it was something like that. So anyway, he said, "Cope," he said, "come on in," because I only lived a mile away from the studio. He said, "Come on in and take a look." And so I did. And I went in and I said, "Okay, go with your 1 to 2 feet." Yeah.
What was that, the LFM? Or how did you even do that?
Oh, man, in those days, we had basically the, we might have had the Barraclinic by then, yes. But, yeah, we had the Barraclinic.
So there were computer models then?
There were computer models, but, they weren't nearly as sophisticated as the ones we have today.
Well, how about 54? How did you forecast a hurricane in 54 without computer models?
Well, that's again, I thank Don Kent for that. I had precious little to go on, that much less than he had, but he was going on the analog of the '38 hurricane, because we had once again a hurricane tucked in, west of 75 degrees longitude, and that most hurricanes that hit New England have to cross 30 degrees latitude somewhere west of 75 to hit us. Just because of the way the coast jets out, you get the recurve. And
it has to be moving very fast too, right?
Fast, right? And so that's what Don picked up on.
Right. There was. So that we had communications, at least. You knew when there was a hurricane going by the Bahamas and Florida.
Right. Right.
But once it gets to North Carolina, we're out of time, though, right?
We had hurricane hunters, so the planes were out.
Oh.
We had the planes out there, and but again, not nearly as sophisticated or as the data produced was pretty minimal compared to what we have now.
Bob, I really appreciate all this, and
My pleasure.
it's an honor to have you here. We call it Bass River Beauty.
Right, sure.
Grew up here. You were on my TV so long ago. And my mom and dad live right across the way over there, and my dad's out there in the garden right now. And I had the pleasure to meet Don Kent too, and Bruce Schwegler and everybody, and Harvey Leonard, and it's just great.
Good guys.
Good guys, and you can see I've got very high-tech equipment here.
Yeah, I checked that out for you all week. We've had 4 inches of rain so far this week on
4 inches of
my
rain.
vacation.
Yeah. Oh, sorry about that. Or your money back. I work for the Chamber of Commerce too.
Yeah, right.
Oh, I won't even get into that.
Oh, no. We have stories about that.
Yeah. Well, the crow is pointing towards the west, and they say west is best. So.
There you go.
Unfortunately.
He's turned
he just turned east. The crow's. Someone bent the crow. It's bent. Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna go for another nor'easter this week, so I think we're gonna break some rainfall records.
Yeah, I may be up to 6 inches before I leave town. Right?
Oh well, we'll try and get you over to Captain Frosty's before the big one hits.
Yeah, right.